Windmills is a Metroidvania where you explore a magical world as a witch hunter. The game is focused on aggressive combat where you even regain health from blocking. You're on a quest to find what happened to your father, who has been missing for years. He went off on his own quest and just never returned. You start at your safe, secluded home and travel to more and more dangerous areas. There are enemies and rough terrain to make it through. You do have a trick up your sleeve. You're actually part of a group called the Crimson Capes. And while it is because you're wearing a red cape, it's a magical cape. It allows you to block magic spells and then absorb them, which means your next attack will be the spell. It's a fun system. You probably think this game is focused on combat, and that's what I thought at first too. But there's also a ton of exploration. You're on a quest to find someone, after all. And by the end of this, you're going to be well traveled. Also, since the game doesn't have a detailed map, there's no clear indication which direction you should head in next. Kinda try them all and see which one progresses the story. Personally, I would like a map. This is clearly a design choice, and I get lost far too often. Anyway, the combat is my favorite part of Windmills. It's all about timing to block the enemy attacks. You only have 3 hit points, as shown by how much blood is covering your sword. While the health bar is small, there's plenty of opportunity to heal, since every time you successfully block, a hit point is returned. This gives fights a unique flow. Missing a block isn't the end of the world, like it might be in a more difficult game. And if you're like me, you are going to be missing some of those blocks, but I usually catch the next one. So my health bar stays fairly topped off. It's only really stressful when encountering a new enemy where you don't know their attack pattern. Bosses are another level though. They are intricate to learn and move through phases, which adds attacks to their repertoire. It did take me a few tries to defeat them, although it didn't feel impossible. I just needed to get my act together. One of the bigger concerns with Windmills is the enemy variety. Considering I find the game to be more about exploration than combat, the variety is fine. I wouldn't want too many enemy types, since then I would have to memorize all their attack patterns. That said, I am feeling a little drained by the enemies because they respawn every time you leave a screen. Then, considering how lost I get, I'm traveling through these areas again and again. Most of the time I try and run by the enemies if I can manage it, but they do drop experience, which I'll get to. But first, we should talk about the spells you have. You start with a heal, even though you can heal by blocking. It's kind of a weird choice, and I almost never use it. I suppose if you barely escape a fight, it's good to heal back up before continuing your journey. Then each boss fight you get another spell. I really struggled to find a use for them though. The enemies attack so fast, I have no idea when you're supposed to have time for these spells. You know your spell is ready to use when the handle of your sword is blue. It drains after you use the spell, and you'll have to refill it by killing enemies. I believe that to be pretty standard. I find the mechanic strange and wonder if it belongs in the game at all, but I don't know all the spells. Maybe there's one later that's actually helpful? It doesn't really impact the game too much, and it's easily ignored. Now, this doesn't really count as an ability, since you gain it through playing, but I also don't really know what it's called. But you can hit a worm and then dodge to fly through the air to reach new platforms you couldn't reach before. This is expected from a Metroidvania that locks off areas until you gain an ability that allows you to pass. At first, I really struggled to nail this maneuver, but I've gotten a lot better since. I still don't get it every time, and I'm feeling a little defeated. Now, I have trouble determining if it's going to let me reach a platform, and these things usually happen over spikes. Death spikes, okay? Which isn't helpful. Anyway, You gain experience from killing enemies, but there isn't much to say. There's a little section in the pause menu book that kind of explains you're more powerful, but that's it. Nothing explicit, it's an auto level up system. I do kill the earlier enemies faster, so it's working. One thing to note is that you do get to keep the experience even though you die. With how few enemies there are, I don't think you're going to go on a rampage and grind it out to the next level. It's just not worth it. Moving on to the narrator. Oh, the unreliable narrator. I mean, between all the dying, the lies, and one very surprising moment, I don't think they can be trusted at all. There is a story here, but what I will say is that it's a very light touch. The narrator barely jumps in. As I said, the game rocks this in some places, and I loved it, but it doesn't have a huge impact. They really could have gone a lot further, and while I don't really want to compare it to Unmetal, that the game's a weird joke on the Metal Gear series, it's hard not to at least consider it. Unmetal was overbearing with their narrator, constantly explaining something, and Windmills could have used a little more of that. For example, when I fell down from a higher ledge, it felt very much like getting over it. The narrator could have made a comment about how they slipped and fell and it was unfortunate. It could have been a funny moment, but it was radio silence, which is unfortunate, but I understand there could be limitations to the system. Finally, if you're planning to pick up Windmills, then there's one thing you should know. It's unforgiving. As I mentioned before, enemies respawn every screen, and until you're experienced on how to handle them, you can die to them pretty easily. Also, let's not forget about the spikes. I said death spikes earlier, that's not a joke. Any spikes you see will kill you instantly. There are floor and wall spikes, and the game has you get dangerously close to both. One little prick and you're dead. Some of the jumps are challenging, so I might only get it 3 out of 5 times, or heck, who am I kidding? I usually miss those difficult ones the first time and land right in the frickin' spikes. What makes it painful is that the checkpoints are far apart, so you will be traversing the same screens over and over, and that's on top of wandering around them from being lost. Overall, Windmills is interesting, and I like it. Lightning round. Do I enjoy this game? Yes. Do I wish I wasn't stuck? Yes. This is dismal because I will not be able to complete this game. I have far too many other games to play, and I'm pretty much stuck at a point where I am so lost as to where to go that I need Google Maps inside this game to help me escape. I think that's kind of the point of the game though. Now, my point is that it's good, although you do have to put up with some stuff to enjoy it. Hopefully, you like getting lost. If I was going to review this game with a sound effect, it would be Thanks for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing and joining us in finding interesting indie games. There's also a link to my Steam curator below. Follow that one. Bye.